I know you've all heard me say this enough, but for already not yet. Already I'm a saint. Already I'm perfect. Already I'm going to heaven. Already I'm sinless, but not yet because I'm still a sinner. Not yet because I still struggle in my life. Not yet because I'm not with the Lord. So realize each other's imperfections. And we're called to forgive those small things. And with it, remember your own flaws. But then we have the majors. The major ones. I had a young lady a couple months ago sitting in my office at the base who was struggling with the majors. Abused by her dad when she was a young girl. Regretfully, the abuse verbally is still continuing, and she's an adult, and the abuse is still continuing. And we talked about forgiveness. When it's a major thing, forgiveness, more often than not, maybe God will just put it on your heart for an immediate forgiveness, but for most of us, it's a slower process of forgiving. Again, it's that decision of our will to accept what Christ did on the cross for that person. Because ultimately, it's not my forgiveness in somebody else's life that's going to change their life. It's what Christ has done on the cross that will change their life. So within the minor or the majors now, the majors, it's that process of understanding that Christ has forgiven them. It's the process of being able to say to them, I have been deeply harmed by you. I am deeply pained by you. And I am trying to walk in forgiveness and to offer grace and forgiveness to you. So there is a process there. It's not a bang, once it happens, it's all done. But it's a process of growing, a process of walking. And we don't want to forgive too quickly, because then we get into the thought that forgiveness is just pretending. And what happens if we pretend all the time with major things? Well, it's like that pot on the stove that's boiling, boiling, boiling. Some of you, I forget what they're called, but when you're doing canning, pressure cooker. You know, the pressure cookers. And when they start to steam, they build up all that pressure in, and they talk about the fact that you need to be careful because if the pan's not a good pan, it can explode. And some people say, whoa, why did that person explode? Well, they've been pretending for so many years and not really walking in forgiveness. So the minors, we're called to forgive quickly, and we can do that. For the majors, realize that it's for the deeper offenses, to move slowly, to say, I am learning to forgive. I am striving to forgive. But it is a process, and I want to walk with you in it, but walk with me in the process. You see, there's a lot of benefits. There's a whole lot more benefits to forgiving than not forgiving. As I said already, an unforgiving heart is like eating rat poison and hoping the other person dies. It's not going to happen. Forgiveness is letting it go. Forgiveness allows you to overcome bitterness. There was an author about 25 years ago who wrote a book about forgiveness, and his view of it was that in order to forgive somebody, you need to take revenge on them. A lot of people bought into that. What's been found out through studies is when you take revenge, when I take revenge on somebody else, it doesn't lead to forgiveness, it leads to wanting more revenge. And it leads to a deeper cesspool within our life. Forgiveness allows us to overcome bitterness. It allows us to move out of our own pain. It allows us to open up our heart for the capacity for more love. Instead of having your heart shut. I mean, I don't know about you. I know for me, and the times in my life when I have been offended, and some of them some major times, man, when I have not offered forgiveness, my heart just goes clap. It just clamps shut. And to that other person, it is shut tight. But when I start to be able to say, God, please give me forgiveness, number one, for the hardness of my own heart, and allow me to see the forgiveness you're giving to the other person, it increases the capacity for my own heart to love. So if you wonder why you have a hard time loving people, I encourage you to look at your heart and say, am I holding resentments? Am I holding anger? Am I holding an unforgiving heart? Or is my heart open? Forgiveness, a benefit of forgiveness is it leads to less anxiety, less stress, lower blood pressure. How many of us don't need lower blood pressure? How many of you, you don't have to raise your hands. How many of you are on, well again, don't raise your hands, but on Lipitor, is it? What are some of those blood pressure things called? Beta blockers, yeah. Yep. Again, I'm not going to ask how many of you have high blood pressure, but here's something you might want to look at if you got high blood pressure. How's your heart? Is it shut hard? Or is God calling you to offer forgiveness? Forgiveness in our life lowers our anxiety, it lowers our blood pressure, it lowers there's fewer symptoms of depression when we learn to forgive each other. Lower risk of alcohol and substance abuse. It's all amazing what forgiveness does for us, and Jesus knew it when he said, forgive those who have sinned against you. Forgive them. If you got something against somebody, go to them and ask for forgiveness before you bring your offering to church. Before you come and take communion, if you're holding a grudge against somebody, go and ask them for forgiveness. Why did Jesus say that? Spiritually, there's the reasons, but he also knew physically what it does to our body. Well, I want to just, we're going to take a few minutes about looking at some of the steps of forgiveness. Just 4 simple little steps. First one is to actively choose to forgive. I mean, if you want to change your eating habits, don't you first of all have to actively choose to decide to change? If you want to start getting in shape, you have to mentally actively choose to start exercising. So to forgive somebody, and even to forgive ourselves, we need to, first off, actively choose that we're going to walk into forgiveness. It's a process of change. And we need to be able to move away from the role of being the victim of the pain somebody else has given to us. But moving into as to what Gandhi said, that the weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is an attribute of the strong. To realize it takes strength to forgive. To actively choose to move into that. And for the minors to be able to say, I forgive you. But for the majors to be able to say, I am working towards forgiving you. It's an active, conscious choice. It's a mental choice over your heart. We Americans like to think that our heart leads us. Our emotions lead us. And we do that too often. The reality is, I really believe our head is called to lead us. It's a choice that we make in our mind of how we will treat each other. Second step, got to learn to fight bitterness. Learn to quit taking that rat poisoning. We need to learn to stop looking at that person with resentment in our lives. And be able to do what the Apostle Paul, when Paul says, whatever is lovely, whatever is pure, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, think on these things. So to fight the bitterness is the reality, and it's the walking of choosing to forgive, but then also the realization that when you look at the other person who has harmed you, to look at them, whatever is lovely, whatever is pure, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, be able to look at them through the eyes of Christ. Not through your eyes of your pain, but through the eyes of Jesus Christ. And to see that Christ gave his life for that person. And that we're called to offer the forgiveness. And then to develop a compassion. And I already talked about that, but it's walking in their shoes. Develop a compassion for them. So, actively choose. 2, need to fight the bitterness. Fight the desire to get revenge. 3, we got to grieve. When you have been hurt, when I have been hurt, there's a loss. There's a loss in life when we have been hurt by somebody else. There's a loss in our own life when I don't forgive my own heart. There's a loss of time. There's a loss of who I am. And we can grieve that loss, work through the painful feelings, and be patient. So you walk through the grieving process. So to the 4th stage, and there's a lot of stages that you can look up online, but this is just one